Hi, my name is Andrei, Jhik. Hope you're doing well. Come for the finance and stay for the weird video, because I know you didn't click on my video. You clicked on Dylan's video, but this is because he is recording for his channel and he wants to see if his video can get more views by being in my studio because I have more subscribers. His theory is it'll help him. I don't know if I agree, but let's see what he says.
A lot of you might not know that Andrei actually has two studios that are right next to each other. So just for some context, I'm going to pull my iPhone out here and show you that we actually are going to have a conversation, but both of the backgrounds are going to fit what I think is a positive signal that YouTube's algorithm has already picked up on. And I'm hoping that is going to help this video outperform on my channel. It is important that you make a comment that explains how you found it. If you were recommended this video because you had watched an Andrei Jhik video, that would be really interesting to me because it would tell me the algorithm kind of knows who's in this video and what setting we're in. When you built the studio, what was the thinking behind having two different sets when one would have sufficed?
My theory is that having more things to break up the video makes it feel like the video is progressing along faster. I've actually had a couple comments say, Andrei, it's weird. I've watched your 14-minute long video, but it feels like it was a lot shorter, but it's the fact that the video keeps evolving, the pace is changing, the scenery is changing, and it keeps things interesting and moving along, which I think contributes to a higher watch time, which ultimately serves the video to more people.
We filmed Don't Sweat It podcast with a guest named Maxx Chewning. Now, he has his own podcast called Don't Be Sour, and it's smaller than another podcast, The Iced Coffee Hour with Graham Stephan, because I knew he filmed with Graham Stephan in Graham Stephan's studio and then brought it over to his channel. My theory is that it would perform similar to the ones that the Iced Coffee Hour gets because the YouTube algorithm would be smart enough to know this video is actually an Iced Coffee Hour episode. It's just on the wrong channel. So do you want to come over here and I'll show you the results?
All right. What?
Here's a comparison of the two podcasts, Iced Coffee Hour and Don't Be Sour.
Okay, so Don't Be Sour has less subscribers and it has less views. Got it. And less videos.
It's a smaller channel by a pretty decent margin.
Okay, so the Iced Coffee Hour usually gets over 117,000 views. Okay, and then Don't Be Sour gets how many views?
On average, it gets 59,000.
Okay, so about half. I don't think it'll be necessarily closer to Graham's normal, but I'll make the prediction that it is higher than his usual. So higher, better, maybe not quite as good as Iced Coffee Hour.
All right, here is the answer.
What? Worse. So rather than isolating the background, the other variable that I feel is more important is maybe it's not the kind of content that their audience is used to seeing. I do think YouTube tracks the soundtrack and the audio, and maybe it tracks the visuals, but what I don't think YouTube does is it doesn't have a filter system that recommends you, the viewer, based on what they're seeing in terms of the visuals of the studio. If anything, it's all about the thumbnail and the title and the actual content of the video itself.
Andrei, I've noticed that you've used some of the same photographs in multiple thumbnails. What's your thinking behind doing that?
Whenever you have a thumbnail that is either scared or sad or angry or something that's shocked, especially shocked, that's when people really click on the videos, which is crazy because I get comments of people saying, well, that's just clickbait. You should use a better title and a thumbnail. And I've actually tried that, and what I've noticed is that my videos and my views go down about 30 to 40% lower by being more accurate to the information. But the goal with my videos, it's to get you to see something interesting that makes you go, huh, what's this about? And then they start watching the video, and then hopefully through the video you learn something new. If I was just as accurate as possible, nobody would click on the videos because nobody knows what dividends and Roth IRAs are.
Do you think that YouTube has an accurate prediction of how well your video is going to do before they show it to the first person? So when you upload your video to YouTube, you know how it goes through a small processing time, maybe like 10 or 15 minutes, where it says we're analyzing your video right now. At that point, I know it's doing content match ID. So do you think at that point it knows certain things about your video that will give it a prediction for how well it will do? Or do you think it waits until it shows it to the first person?
I wouldn't be surprised if they had some sort of filtering system or keywords that the algorithm listens to, because I know already from an audio perspective, it knows whether someone swears or how likely it is that sponsors would want to sponsor that video because of what the content actually is. So I wouldn't be surprised if it knows ahead of time what those keywords are and how it relates to the search volume of what people are looking for.
Yeah, I would guess that it probably does also. One thing that the human brain does is it predicts far beyond what you would imagine, and really it only brings your attention to something that changes. So for example, imagine if somebody moved your doorknob on your front door up 3 inches. You would would probably walk up to your door and have a moment where you were just slightly confused. What's happening is that your brain, completely below your conscious thinking, is very aware of where it usually is. You've already trained your neural network, your brain, on where that doorknob is. And in the same way, I would guess that when you upload a YouTube video, it already understands a lot of context and it has a prediction about how well it's going to do. And that's part of my thesis about why I think that when this video gets uploaded to my channel, it might recognize you and this background, your voice, the reverb in this room, the exact lens and camera that you're using, and it might think to itself, I've seen this before, and then as it content matches and sees that this really is original content from you, I might be able to get some of that traction.
I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you think this video is actually going to get more comments and more views for Dylan's channel? I don't know. My guess is it actually might, but not for the reasons that we think.
Why not? That could be the experiment.
The reason that we're trying to test with the hypothesis here is the visual, and it's all the indexed visual stuff of the studio. But what I think is actually going to happen, potentially, you could actually watch it to this point where it's like, wow, Dylan, out of all of your videos, this thing has 50% watch time and people are actually watching. Let's serve it to more people. So this might get more views, but not necessarily because we're in a studio, but because we actually have an interesting video.
Same principle, huh? You think the prop money keeps people looking at the screen?
Yeah, I think anything that you can do to visualize things that are conceptual helps a lot. So money, for example, is not something we see day to day because it's in our checking or our savings accounts. So when you see money and when you visualize what $1 million looks like, it kind of blows your mind of how little it actually all is. But then when you see $1 billion or even $1 trillion, then it really blows your mind because, again, we just don't see money in our day-to-day lives. We see it in our bank accounts. So the more of these concepts that I can bring to actual real life, I think the more interesting the video is.
All right, so I want to talk to you about neural networks. Now, artificial intelligence comes in multiple flavors, but one of the key principles is that you don't actually program it to do anything. You feed it data and you let it reconfigure itself until it can make a prediction. In the same way, our human brains work just like that. We have neurons and they fit together in a very similar way as an artificial intelligence would, and it's trained on the data in your life. So you may not think this way, but when I see you and I see your head, I think, oh, there's a neural network that has been trained for the last 3 years on YouTube, and you have worked really hard at it. You've spent so many hours, and every single night you went to bed, I think that your brain refined its understanding. So you do have basically a superpower, something that only a YouTuber who put as much time as you into it would understand about how to make a video, how to make a thumbnail. Can you give me some examples of ways that you feel like your brain has been tuned over the last 3 years? What does this Andrei Jhik know about things like releasing times, lighting, thumbnails, camera presentation that Andrei Jhik from 3 years ago wouldn't have?
The first part is the research part, which takes me the longest, which takes me 8 to 10 hours to do for the video. But what dictates the research is the conversation that I think the internet is trying to have, which is, what is it the internet wants to learn about money or about this investment thing? Is it GameStop? Is it Bitcoin? Is it real estate? So whatever that thing is, I try to hone in on, and that's what I focus on. And that's how I try to title my videos. Now, from the thumbnail perspective, we already know that from a psychological point of view, it's the shocked faces or the painful faces that get the most views. But think about it. If I made a video that was just positive, right? Like, the economy is fine, nothing to see here, and I broke down the concepts of the economy, why would you ever click anything if in the title I say everything's great and you see me smiling? You'd be like, cool, I got the whole video. I don't need to watch it and waste 10 minutes of my time. But if it's something that is vague enough or abstract enough to where you're like, ooh, what is the answer? I want to know. That helps with the title and the thumbnail, which is what helps with the click-through rate and how much YouTube shows your video to different people. Now, once you actually make the video, you have to make it compelling and you have to have a high watch time. And the way to do that is to make it entertaining, to break it up, to change the scenery, etc., etc., etc.
So in your last video, when you talked about ChatGPT, it seemed like you were a bit surprised and impressed by its human-like ability to understand context, meaning, and hold a conversation in memory. Would that be true?
Yeah, ChatGPT actually really blew my mind. I didn't know that the speech systems were that good, but I used it for a video, and I saw Graham actually used it for his video, and it wrote an entire YouTube script in his voice. So it was actually kind of crazy.
Being open to the idea of how that impressed you, do you think there's any chance that if you were privy to YouTube's algorithm and you could see the deep neural network that's actually making the recommendations, you'd be open to the thought of it potentially understanding context in a similar way, but from video content instead of text content?
Can you ask that question one more time, but like I'm 5?
If you really want to know why my YouTube channel doesn't have views, that's why.
Every time we hang out with Dylan, he'll come over and he'll be like, all right, I have this great idea. And the way he produces his videos is incredible. And then I'll look at his title and his thumbnail and I'll be like, so what are you trying to say? And then he'll explain it to me in 5 minutes and I'll be like, I think I understand. And then I'll say something simple and then we'll try to workshop it. But I guess where we differ is that I think it's the human, it comes first. So the algorithm comes second and the human is first. I actually think the YouTube algorithm does potentially track the visuals, the sound of my voice, the look of my studio. It might actually have that in terms of the metadata in some database somewhere. But what it doesn't do, I think, is that it's not a filter that it necessarily is turned on, if you will. It's something that it has the capability to do, but it doesn't necessarily use it. So it's indexing that information, but not to the capacity that it's useful yet.
Okay, so when you use the same photograph in multiple places, it's because you know it performed well on one video, correct?
Correct.
Now, do you think that it's only the human who's noticing that face and it's triggering a memory of a good video and that's why they're clicking on it? Or do you think the YouTube algorithm actually sees the pixels and says, oh, I have seen this thumbnail before, I'm going to show it to this audience?
Well, I think it's just like Mr. Beast says, you can substitute the algorithm with the audience.
Anytime you say the word algorithm, just replace it with audience.
They're the same thing. I'm trying to get people to be interested in what I think is interesting for the audience. And wherever the audience goes is where the algorithm follows, and that's what it recommends them. So I'm not really tricking anything like a robot or an AI system as much as I am trying to appeal to what I think the general population wants to see.